All right, we're live. Welcome everybody to the Guusto webinar series. Come on in. We'll give everybody kind of a chance here to kind of get checked in. You're joining myself, Sejal. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO here at Guusto. I'm joined by Sejal Daswani, Chief People Officer over at Deputy. And today we're talking all about kind of future-proofing hourly work. So how to flexibility and innovation will drive kind of retention in your business. Thank you, Guusto team here, kind of sharing kind of Sejal's LinkedIn profile, as well as kind of deputy.com there. As folks are kind of getting checked in, feel free to chime in the chat here. So Tyler's got us kind of going. Hello from Vancouver, but yeah, put your name, where you're joining, kind of in the chat. I can kind of get us started as well. I'm Skay. I've got a really tough name. It's pronounced Skay, and Sejal. I'm actually over in kind of North Van. But let us know, and if you feel like kind of getting involved in the community, share your kind of LinkedIn profile there. We can kind of all get connected. We love talking about all things kind of HR related, recognition, frontline. That's kind of our sphere. Deputy is obviously kind of in the frontline space. But Sejal, with that, I mean, why don't the audience kind of knows me? Yes. Let's get to know you a little bit. Why don't you do a kind of a quick little introduction for folks as we're getting checked in?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Sky. It's great to be here with the community. All of us really kind of passionate about our frontline workers that connects us and brings us together today. Introduction. I'm a mother of 3 and 2 puppies.
Brave. So
Yes.
brave.
I'm based out in the Bay Area. I started my career in management consulting, corporate strategy, as well as marketing. And then I built a company, consulting company, was part of the founding team, where we saw that when we were doing consulting and we didn't factor the people lens, we were usually leaving as consultants the client with very expensive slide decks. So that germinated the idea to start Katzenbeck Partners. We were then bought out by Booz and Co. And today it's PwC's people practice. So that's what brings me as into the HR space. Again, passionate about business strategy, and there is no business strategy without our people strategy and our people. So
love that.
That's my calling and my focus.
Yeah, they often say, kind of culture just eats strategy for breakfast, right? Like,
absolutely.
Welcome, Roop, joining us from Caledon, Ontario, just outside of Toronto. Audrey, joining us from Mississauga. Great to have you with us. Tell us a little bit, Sejal, about Deputy. What's Deputy all about?
Yeah, so Deputy is the workforce solution for the shift worker. So, we have a lot of HCMs and products, but very often everything is really oriented to the desk workers, and we do not think about the experience and the unique needs of our frontline worker. So, when you think about the frontline worker, how are you connecting to them, whether it's from shift work, being able to set their own shifts. And so again, if we call it the people platform built for hourly work. I have used a lot of HCMs in my time, and I always craved a product like Deputy. So I was CHRO at a 14,000 person company, and we had 12,000 folks in the field. And it would have been great. I think at that time we had Workday, but it would have been great to have a partner to be able for me to allow our hiring to have shift works. I could have brought in a whole unique, and diverse set of employees into the market if I was able to offer shift work, also compliance. And labor shortages are a real thing. And so having shift work actually brings a whole kind of parenthood, even workforce into the labor pool.
Okay. And we've got your team has shared some slides with us here.
Yes.
So our team's going to kind of flip through these, and you're going to kind of run through them. So feel free just to help our team. Why don't you just kind of say, next slide whenever you kind of want
Sure.
us to flip through them. But I think we can really empathize with this because we play in the rewards and recognition space, which is well served. There are a ton of great companies, and they provide outstanding products, but primarily for desk workers that kind of are sitting at computers, and primarily kind of all designed around kind of like tech companies serving other tech companies.
Yes.
All giving each other kind of points back and forth, and they're fabulous products. But where they break down is kind of like for kind of the hospital worker or the like person out on the manufacturing floor, or somebody kind of in retail. And so we it was kind of not really by design, but more we actually started our product. It was a gifting app to buy your friend a beer, and and so it was kind of by chance that we had kind of designed this product where you didn't have to load all your people into the platform, and so it was kind of cool because you could kind of put one person in the platform and then send rewards or gifts to anybody. And so what we found was that it worked really well for kind of frontline organizations because they didn't have to load all 12,000 people um,
Yes.
into the app. You mentioned you were a CHRO at a company with, was it 12,000 or 14,000, or it was 14,000 people, but 12,000 were frontline, right? So in
Yeah,
that
no,
example,
12,000. Exactly.
you could load 2,000 people into the application, and give them kind of budgets and whatnot. But the 12,000 that were frontline workers, they could just be recipients of the rewards, right? And you could either send out those rewards via email or text message, but you could also like just bring up QR codes and present those to frontline workers, and they could just scan them with their mobile device, or
Yes.
print them out, and they never had to deal with any sort of technology. And so thinking about solutions that engage the frontline workforce, and include them in that kind of like HR or HCM product is kind of critical in order to kind of like retain them. So with that, why don't we kind of jump into some of the slides, talk to us a little bit, kind of like what deputies kind of seeing, and what your team, how your team kind of thinks about kind of the frontline workforce.
Absolutely. So I I think most of us have just one degree of separation, or ourselves grew up in a frontline job, whether it was retail as teens and later.
Right. Yeah.
So again, we all have that empathy. We know somebody in our family that is part of the global workforce because the front line makes up 80% of our global economy. And so again, Sky, when you're mentioning so much of technology is oriented to the 20% desk work. So again, we have this kind of passion for the mission of our frontline workers at Deputy. And again, it's the empathy of knowing that there are folks on their feet. The mobile, is probably like the only outlet to connection, or if they're in the field. So, how do we think about these workers? How do we really think about their experience? How do we think about the complex compliance landscape? And then how do we think about training, connecting, engaging, and supporting this workforce? And again, having been in the shoes of lots of people leaders facing this problem, when the opportunity came up to be the people officer at Deputy, again, it was just like a no-brainer for me. Like this is a pain point we have to solve, and it feels just great to be able to day in, day out help support our 80% of our global workforce.
Let's go. I love it. Okay, great. So take us through kind of some of the slides. How many slides do you have for us, Sejal?
I think it's just two. So
Okay.
it's probably just one more. But again, double clicking here, traditional HCMs have really oriented to very static workforce, right? So there wasn't a concept of shift. There wasn't, a concept of how do we make sure people are taking their proper shift breaks, making sure
Hmm.
compliance was there.
Hmm.
making sure we can reach out to the populations. And when you think about, now Gen Z, the Gen Z has entered the workforce, and it is a very, very different generation in terms of, they're the generation that went through COVID. They're the ones that have grown up in a mobile first kind of society, or tech first. And so how are we thinking about the changing needs of the multi generations that we have in the workforce today? 43% are millennials, and so again, when you think of it, the majority has shifted from the traditional boomers or Gen Y to now a very mobile workforce that also values flexibility, autonomy, independence, while appreciating kind of the support, the growth. So it's a very unique workforce that we've all inheriting. And with that, our technology and our solutions and our approach to the workforce has to evolve. And
Yeah.
then one more slide.
Before we go to the next slide, I will just challenge you on this because we hear from employers all the time that, while this is the case, they still have to, HR teams still have to build their programs such that they are catering and supporting multiple generations.
Yes.
Like especially in I hear you in like retail environments, right? So like you've got kind of like, I don't know, like pick a brand like Aritzia, it's all kind of like young women kind of like working at the stores and like
Yes.
mobile first, let's go. Okay, great. But you walk into like a food processing kind of operation or a healthcare operation, and you've got like four or potentially even like five
Multiple.
generations
Yes.
of people. And now you're constructing kind of programs where it's like, okay, I need, mobile first solutions for my Gen Zs. And I've got, kind of cleaning staff in the hospitals or like hotel environments where I've got, kind of like language issues and kind of like older folks. They want nothing to do with technology. Like print something out and give it to me. Like put something on the bulletin board. Like I'm not touching anything. And so it's really, really challenging for those HR teams that are kind of trying to construct programs across, kind of like multiple generations. So lots of empathy there. But in order for those kind of programs to be successful, in order for them to go to their senior executive teams and get budgets approved, they do need to demonstrate that they are kind of thinking about this and that they're trying to kind of retain and attract talent across kind of multiple generations.
Yeah, and I think, look, the since the onset of mobile technology, I do think most of the workforce. I mean, I don't feel like they're. I think my parents, who are now in their 80s, are probably more on technology throughout the day. I mean, you cannot unglue them from their mobile device or their iPad, right? So I do
Totally.
think that the generations have shifted, and at least, like, again, the user friendliness of like the mobile,
Yeah.
and again, that's where the simplicity of the technology is important, because it does have to be, in the end, whether you're a Gen Z or whether you're a boomer, the simplicity and the interface is really important.
Yep.
Um, and, again, I think COVID also helped us all. I mean, shopping online became a norm,
Mm.
and also
Mm.
staying connected with friends or family, even our work, everything went remote. So I do think that some of these societal shifts have also helped level the playing field.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good point. Okay, cool. Well, let's go to kind of your last slide here.
Yes. So again, most of the folks here today feel these macro trends, right? So these macro trends kind of escalated and hit a peak at COVID, and then have continued on. And we are seeing high inflation, cost of living. We're seeing like multimodal jobs. People are working multi jobs, right? It's called polyemployment. We're seeing increasing compliance requirements, and then even these differ what in the United States by state or internationally. We have labor shortages, so more and more people are now leaving the workforce with new generations coming in. And then you have just data and system complexity. AI is very much in the foreground across any sector that you're in. So again, we at Deputy are thinking through these macro trends. How do they affect our frontline workers? We do, deep research, in pursuit of just really understanding our frontline work and making sure solutions and technology meets the needs.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Um, Thank you for sharing some of these kind of like macro trends. Another one that I've seen too is kind of around population growth, right? And kind of like that working age population, and then you think about kind of like some of the political kind of environment in both Canada and in the U.S.
Yes.
And kind of like immigration, kind of you know
Yes.
spikes and restrictions. And and so with kind of like current kind of political environments, you think about like the pressures of kind of like immigration restrictions, and what that does to kind of like frontline workforces, as immigration restrictions kind of heighten frontline, there's more competition for kind of like frontline workers, right? And so
Absolutely.
the ability to kind of attract kind of frontline workforces, retain those frontline workers, it is tough, right? So
Absolutely.
let's jump into kind of a bit of a conversation here just around how we can kind of future proof hourly work, like what can we do around flexibility innovation. So got some questions for you,
Yeah.
and you've got. I encourage people to go kind of uh, check out Sejal on LinkedIn here. She has just a wealth of experience, and now kind of working for Deputy, kind of in an actual kind of like frontline focused tech company. It's really interesting, but hourly work, traditionally doesn't offer a whole lot of flexibility, like salaried positions do, right? Where, maybe I've got, some vacation days, and I don't know about Deputy, but like here at Guusto, we've got unlimited vacation policies, right? So what trends are you seeing that, suggest things might be changing for frontline workforces?
So at a macro level, let me, maybe share my experience. So what you mentioned is the immigration, the kind of level aging societies, and more folks leaving the workforce. All this will create labor shortages, and we can see it even through COVID. I mean, you could not get people into, because of the subsidies that also in the US were being provided, you couldn't fill some of these roles fast enough. Um, so when I was the CHRO having 12,000 frontline workers, I was hiring 1,200 people a month. And when we were doing it, we didn't have a solution like Deputy or other products that allow for shift work. And
Hmm.
what shift work products do is it opens up the aperture of employment to those that may feel like they have to choose between work and family or work and caregiving. So as an example, when I was hiring the 1,200 folks, I had to offer them, basically 40-hour work weeks, and I didn't have the ability for shift work. Had I had the opportunity for shift work, I could have really tapped into potentially seniors who would have wanted maybe more flexible hours, or working
Hmm.
caregivers who may, drop off their children, and then 9 to 2 would be a perfect time zone when, they would be engaged in work. So I do think, especially with our frontline workers, and the new generations coming in, flexibility is key.
And this
So
is and
how do
this
we
is
allow for shift work?
Yeah, and so this is where, and like technology can really help, because it's almost like and I mean, cut me off, I'm going down kind of like the wrong path, but like the worker can self-manage. Like they can
Yeah.
go in and say, this is when I want to work. It's not the manager kind of having to kind of say, hey, I've got an open shift, here are the hours and whatnot. Um,
Yes. So, Sky, you'd be surprised at how many of our customers were in Excel spreadsheets, even at up to like thousands of employees before they adopted Deputy. So,
mm.
imagine like the compliance risk as well. So, while flexibility and some of these elements are critical, I think the compliance landscape in hourly work has also gotten very complicated.
Well,
So
let's jump to compliance. It's a
sure.
huge concern for kind of employers with hourly workers. Can you walk us through some of the biggest regulatory kind of challenges you're seeing today?
Yeah, so I think they've a few themes, right? So there's minimum wage laws, overtime, break laws, and so again, these vary internationally as well as in some states. And so there are fair work weeks that or predictive scheduling laws that have also put pressure on businesses. So really, you have to be rooted in accurate shift work. You have to be able to make sure that you can track it. There's documentation. So as an example, the in U.S. businesses and cities with fair work week laws paid more than 27 million in 2022 alone. And so we're
Mm,
seeing this escalate. And so how do we, give our employees flexibility, but also then manage the compliance side of things? And so this is where, technology solutions can be really helpful. We've seen a lot of top brands lately, have brand reputation risks because of compliance. It's also one of the easiest things to go after, from a litigation perspective. Record keeping as well as reporting requirements have gone under greater scrutiny. So, how are we making sure that employees have the proper breaks? There any allowance for overtime work? All that really needs to be documented, along with leaves. And so again, the leave and the paid leave, if most HR leaders know how complex that is and how much it varies state by state as well as internationally. So that's another feature on parental leave, paid sick leave, and elements that we have to like really be robust about.
okay, okay. And for audience members here, I mean, this is compliance stuff can get very complicated, right? So
Yes.
if folks have questions, feel free to kind of drop them in the chat at any point here. Don't feel like you need to kind of hold off till the end. We can dive into those kind of as we go.
Excellent.
Of course, at the end we can kind of tackle any as well. But this is really interesting. I was talking with some folks who we're kind of in the reward space, right? And so we got talking about like, hey, does rewards play a role in kind of the scheduling and shift kind of bidding space, or incentivizing kind of shift workspace and so talk to me a little bit about that, like from an employer standpoint. I'm trying to like fill some shifts, right? And so now you can kind of like think about, hey, I've got these empty shifts. Maybe there's a way to use technology to like incentivize folks to, I've got these midnight kind of like overnight shifts that I've
Correct.
got to, kind of like fill. Whether it's a reward through like a platform like Guusto, or maybe it's just kind of built right into like a platform like Deputy or whatnot. And I've increased the hourly rate, or there's a slight
Yes.
bonus attached to it. But I've also thought about like, hey, does this employee have overtime? Maybe I don't want to select that worker and I want to pick somebody else, so I'm not kind of like triggering kind of any sort of like compliance issues, right? And so is that something that kind of Deputy's been thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, so, we work with all of these, parameters. And so, the Shift product really helps with, it's almost like an on-demand solution. So how are we able to offer like, hey, these are the needs, and when you're talking about, um, you know, recognition, you do vary rates based on, okay, weekends or after 5, you're probably going to get an increased salary or increased um, cost per hour. So I think that solutions like Deputy allows for that.
Cool. Okay. So I love stories,
Yes.
Sejal. How can businesses build like a really strong company culture for hourly workers, especially in frontline industries where workers may feel kind of disconnected, undervalued? Can you share some stories from clients that you've worked with, without it being kind of like too much of a promotion for deputy, but
Oh yeah, of course.
what, what are some takeaways for our audience, whether they work with deputy or somebody else, or they just kind of want to do it on their own? What have you seen as some tactics that you've seen some clients kind of execute on?
And I think, whenever we think of technology or software solutions, we think that it can really just help solve kind of the critical problems, right? But we never think of technology as causing or being able to really build connection or build closeness. And so like a shift product or whatever, it just sounds so dry, but the potential for some of these solutions to really build community, build stronger communication is very, very powerful. So one example we have, and I'm sure solutions like deputy in other contexts allows for similar, inclusive communication. So we have like a beautiful story that we experienced with one of our ACE hardware partners,
Hmm.
called Hardware Stories. So it's the story of a little boy named Miller, and he was overcoming health issues as a child. And it was just such an inspiring way that this community in Citrus Heights, California, they came together both in fundraising activities, and then creating a very unique workplace at Miller's Ace Hardware. So they partner with us on, they use Deputy, but the way Deputy helped them is Deputy created, they use the communication feature that we offer, and so it was a way where it built a community and people were able to share stories. They were able to come together. They were able to support this little boy. And, it's gone on to become kind of like a huge inspiration um, for so many in that community. And so again, when you think about the frontline work or when you think about shift workers, you never really hear them being able to interrelate with each other, share stories, share inspiration, come together, support each other. And so I think that this is the unique benefit of something like Deputy because we're very heart driven. We have a whole kind of workforce management suite where we can connect with our employees. Employees can connect with each other. Um, and so I think that that's a core element. So, a lot of traditional HCMs that I had used didn't allow for that community building.
Yeah, interesting. And so is the kind of core purpose of that tool to allow frontline workers to communicate in order to kind of change their shifts, and hey, can you pick up this shift, can you do that? And this was kind of an interesting use case where it was
Yes.
oh, we didn't think of that actually happening within that kind of communication tool. And have you since kind of worked with your product teams to think about how to repeat that at other clients?
Yeah, constantly. I mean, these are when you have a use case, you also share it to inspire that in other communities. And so another element is really, when you think about the frontline work, imagine those in retail. They're on their feet all day and just
Yeah.
rinse and repeat. You could be selling, and again, it's very isolating to get 50 no's in a day, right? So like from an even mental health aspect, how are you connecting with others? Like maybe Sky and Sejal have a little bit of a contest, or hey Sky, let's see how many we can do today. So there's an ability to create those kinds of engagement tools, activities within employees that a manager can run, right? And so it's great for training and development. It's great for empowerment and ownership. It's great for kind of like recognition and rewards. Even to just get like a kudos means a lot when you're just rinsing and repeating in some of these jobs that are very hard, physically taxing, as well as a little bit emotionally, because if you're in sales and some of these, or dealing with tough customers or dealing with frontline, it can get taxing.
Yeah, I think about my mind immediately goes to healthcare and the challenges in that space. I will say that the missing piece on recognition there is it it's very difficult for organizations to drive repeatable recognition um, if it's not, well, a couple things. If it's not visible, so like if it's frontline worker to frontline worker, that's it's wonderful. It'll happen kind of organically here and there, but if it's not kind of like visible to the manager, but also if there's no kind of incentives, it doesn't need it, it doesn't need to be like a reward happens every time for the recognition. But the way we've seen kind of companies really succeed with non-monetary programs is if, at the end of the month, they bring up a leaderboard and they say,
Yes.
hey, Sejal, you've been recognized the most this month. We'd like to reward you with a, kind of $25 or $50 kind of,
Absolutely.
kind of gift card, and you can redeem it, wherever you want here. Or, hey, Sejal, you actually said the most shout outs this month, and you're a real culture champion here. We'd like to celebrate you for, kind of sending all those shout outs. And that will kind of like, be publicly kind of visible to everybody. And then, encourage them to kind of, participate in sending all those shout outs. And so you can do it in the form of leaderboards. And then the third way is actually in the form of a random draw, so that people don't go, they look at the leaderboard, they're like, oh, Sejal sent out like 50 shout outs. I'm never going to catch her. But rather like, kind of at the end of every week, there's just like a random draw where like 2 or 3 names get drawn, and both the sender and the receiver of that shout out receive like a $10 kind of reward. Right. And so that does a few things in both kind of surfacing some of the recognition on an ongoing basis, but it helps to kind of drive kind of ongoing kind of participation in those programs. So
Yeah,
if
absolutely. I think, Sky, it's the needing to be seen and appreciated.
mhm,
And I think that is the hardest aspect of, employers being able to do that for their employees. And so, how does technology become a connector? How can technology become a tool that builds connection, builds teams, builds diversity of thought and workplace, while increasing the labor supply and increasing opportunities for those that may not have considered your company because it was more rigid or 9 to 5. So that's where some of these solutions that offer flexibility while making sure you're going to do it right is really important.
and if a lot of it can be somewhat kind of like built into the process and automated and kind of almost just kind of like nudge managers and like poke them and like put it in their face, like, hey, Skay, Sejal reports to you and you haven't recognized her in the last 90 days. Like,
Right.
get your act together.
Exactly.
We put that feature into our product and like saw a huge boost in engagement. Little things like that. But I want to ask you about feedback and like what role does kind of employee feedback play in shaping kind of, future workforce strategies? Like how can organizations ensure that, they're listening and acting on this input and what you've kind of seen there.
You know, in some ways, when you think about building a product, you're so obsessive about what is the customer going to be thinking. And in a company context, it is just equivalently important for us to listen to what our employees are feeling. I mean, it's the good old adage where a happy employee is a happy customer.
Mm,
And so, especially with our frontline who are, really interacting and touching the customer day in, day out, how do you make that a robust experience? And needs matter. And I think, that's a key element where we have abilities to tap into listening to what the employees are feeling, listening to whether it's through quick pulses or whether it's through Q&A or outlets, even pushing out then training and development. If we're noticing a certain pattern, certain problem statement coming up for our employees, how do we then craft training solutions so that the majority of our employees can benefit? So I think that those are important elements to really include. And culture and engagement, we talk a lot about it, but it requires action. It requires being able to listen to our employees. And so this is where the inclusive communication, so many frontline workers do feel disconnected because
mm.
everything is top down.
Mm-hmm.
And so this ability to have a bottoms up, channel with our customers really helps create that inclusive culture, two-way communication, and bridges the gap between what managers may think sitting in HQ and what the front line actually is experiencing.
Yeah, yeah. I saw a report from Beekeeper. You familiar with their product? They put out an annual report, and there was just an awesome data graph. I wish I'd kind of had it prepped here, but it was kind of like basically a survey of frontline workers and kind of like what was kind of like driving their productivity, or what they felt was kind of hindering their productivity. And actually scheduling was right at the top of the list, and I think recognition might have been second or third. And then they interviewed executities and kind of like what they felt, and the mismatch was
Yeah.
just like, it was so
Very.
stark,
Yes.
because like those items were like way down the list, and management had some other things at the top of the list, and they're building all of their programs off kind of like what they think the problem is. And it's like, well, hang on a second, like just go talk to your employees about what
Yes.
like go fix your scheduling thing, give them the flexibility that they want, give them the ability to kind of get the shifts that they need, and make them feel appreciated. It's pretty simple.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, Deputy does a similar, we do a state of the hourly work every year. And
Oh,
so,
cool.
we partner with some research groups, and we, really dive deep into what are the trends, what are the challenges, and then what are some opportunities facing our hourly work. So we're working on the 2025 version. Yeah, but we survey almost 1,000 plus hourly workers, and then we report back on the findings.
Do we have that link, team? Can we put that up on the screen for folks? Maybe we can kind of scour the deputy site real quick in the background
Yes, that would be great.
while we're continuing to kind of chat here, and we can kind of leave that as a bit of a takeaway for the audience. And if we can't find it, I'm sure we'll kind of follow up with audience members, and we can link it up there for folks. Well, Sejal, we're getting to the end of the conversation. This has been fabulous. What does a sustainable kind of like hourly workforce look like in kind of like, I mean, I was going to go 10 years, but AI is moving so fast.
It is
Let's reel
moving
it
so
back.
fast.
Let's
Yeah,
reel it
so
back.
yeah,
Let's talk kind of like 5 years, kind of one presidential term. um, how can organizations kind of future proof their strategies?
yeah. So you're bringing up a really important point. So even in our 2024 study, when we connected with hourly workers, everybody is really, AI is very much top of mind. And almost 50% were actually enthusiastic about AI, because when you think about AI, it has the power to really automate the mundane, and allow for higher order work and more satisfying work for workers. So I do think, you can't get away from it, but the opportunity that AI offers to automate some of the mundane, while then really employers have to be in a position where we're thinking about the up training, the up leveling of our workforces to be able to do the higher order work. I do think that that is, you can't get away from it, and you can't move fast enough, because of just how much the AIs are progressing.
Cool. Well, Michael's got an AI question. Thank you, Michael. What new AI innovations is Deputy working on to further enhance workforce flexibility and retention?
Great question. So we just held our we hold AI hackathons, and so some fascinating ideas that we got everything from, how do you project shift for folks? What are some common problems that the employees are seeing that you can automate solutions, as well as like training and engagement. So I can go into a little bit of like the roadmap, but I think we're short on time. But 2025, that is where the features are going to be. Again, how can a platform like Deputy up level the manager from the mundane to the truly insight oriented work?
Does Deputy host like a webinar with like a roadmap webinar talking about kind of what's coming down the pipeline for AI or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to. I don't think that's something we do. I think it's more on a customer to customer basis,
Okay.
that conversation. But yeah, happy to follow
I
up.
mean, maybe it's something we should do together. On our side, we're just about to kind of roll out a cool little kind of AI feature. If you're writing a recognition message to somebody, you could put in kind of like a couple little bullets around
Words and it
like,
automates. Yes.
yeah, like, kind of situation behavior impact is a
Yes.
bit of a framework that we kind of recommend to folks. So like, hey, Sejal, I want to recognize you for, doing this webinar was kind of the situation, the behavior, a couple little bullets on, so part of the conversation and the impact, hopefully people got some value from this and maybe we, yeah. Oh,
Part two.
yeah, hopefully we're able to drive some interest in kind of for our companies. But then it'll expand the message out, right, and kind of give you some suggestions and kind of and just hopefully make that whole process easier. But the more exciting AI stuff coming on our roadmap that I think was really cool to see our product team kind of playing with was around a couple things. There's a lot of like analytics that you can do. So like if I'm a
Yes.
manager and I'm sending out recognition, I can get analytics around like, hey, how much recognition did my direct report Bob send out,
Yes.
over the last year, and how did that compare to Sally, and I can chart that all out and whatnot. But now I can use AI to like do some qualitative and give me like the actual like sentiment of like what
Insights. Yeah. Mhm.
what was kind of like the like why was Bob sending that out, and why
Right.
was Sally sending that out? Because we can actually like look at the language and like, kind of read that. And then the third piece is around kind of like predictive AI, right? And so like looking at,
Absolutely.
specific to like both of our tools, like we're in HR tech, right? Like we're trying to drive retention, we're trying to drive kind of engagement. And so like who are the people that are performing at a really high level that are, kind of like likely going to need promotions, that are receiving a lot of recognition, and who are the people that are not receiving any recognition that are at risk of um, leaving the company.
Yes. Yes.
And so, AI
Yeah, and
can kind
it
of,
starts with hiring too, right, Sky? Because if you can hire, so much of hiring is getting automated with AI.
oh
So
yeah, big
in our
time.
suite of products, everything, it's like the employee life cycle. How can you make hiring easier? How can you make that match easier right at the get-go? Into insights and solutions on what employees are facing, what employees are seeking, and like you're saying, manager insights to be able to give managers the insights on, hey, this is where your problem areas are, this is where you're having maybe a high attendance issue, this is where you're having high attrition, these are the needs that are coming back from a engagement or pulsing. How about you put XYZ solutions in place so that you can engage X district or Y frontline population more? I think so that is the goal. It's like AI will fundamentally help us evolve that entire employee life cycle.
Totally. Well, let's finish on that note. Sejal, it has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, and I really appreciate you, and thank you for taking the time to chat with me and share some of your insights with our audience. I encourage folks to connect with you on LinkedIn and check out kind of Deputy at for anybody in kind of a frontline organization, dealing with the kind of the challenges of, kind of 14,000 employees and 12,000 on the front line, and, how to manage all the scheduling challenges there, compliance and flexibility, and all the moving pieces. It's no kind of easy task. So check it out, and our team will definitely kind of track down the report that your team kind of puts together there, and we'll follow up with that. If folks are interested in learning more about Guusto, obviously just guusto.com to use, and we've got a fantastic pitch kit for folks that want help kind of pitching the benefits of recognition and rewards to their executive teams. Obviously, we got to go and kind of sell this to your CFOs, CEOs, and demonstrate the value that it can deliver, and the ROI that it can drive. So check that out, and we'll look forward to kind of seeing everybody at the next webinar. Have a wonderful week and wonderful kind of Black History Month, and we'll see everybody on the next one.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the great conversation.
All right. Thanks, Sejal. Bye-bye. Did she upload?